Welcome to another episode of the Gain Momentum podcast, focusing on timeless lessons from global industry leaders about how to grow and scale a business in hospitality, food service, and technology. I'm Jason Manis here with my co-host, Adam Mogolinsky. Adam, how are you?
Doing great.
Very good. Today's guest is Frank Pitsikalis, former founder and CEO of ResortSuite, now Senior VP of Product Strategy for Agilysys. Hi, Frank.
Hey, guys.
All right, Adam, take it away.
So, Frank, and to all listeners, we structure this podcast around 4 key questions to ask all guests about how to scale and grow a business from their experience. The first question, Frank, when it comes to scaling a business, what is the single piece of advice you would give entrepreneurs from your perspective as a professional in hospitality technology?
Well, thanks, Adam. I think ultimately it's about building the right team around you because, obviously the product fit has to be right. But if you don't have the right team to sort of help you scale and have those really key hires, right? Someone's going to manage operations, obviously a chief. If I look at it from, what we had set up, at ResortSuite, having a strong CTO, and sometimes that can be the founder as well. In my case, it was, and then that transitioned to my number 2 as playing that role as we grew as a business. But obviously having a strong CFO and then, a chief operating officer, just so that you've got that team that's going to help, as you bring employees in at all levels, ensuring that everyone's not just looking to you in terms of what to do, right? You need to make sure that you've got a really strong team that's going to help you execute, provide a level of service that can really differentiate in the marketplace, and obviously deliver and execute on your product strategy. So I think really my best advice would be surround yourself with A players. Don't try to go cheap in terms of your team, structure in a way that is scalable, is financially viable, but make sure you've got people that may have strengths that you may not have, right? And trying to hire people that think and give you answers that sound like what you want to hear is not a great way to grow a product team in hospitality. You need to have people that, are going to challenge and potentially shift your thinking, right? And so, look at things where I was more of that strategic thinking, visionary type, but I wasn't great on some of the smaller details, right? So you have to have people when you hire an executive assistant, make sure they're taking care of those details, right? That you may not otherwise focus on.
That's a great answer, and we've heard that before. Like, right? It's people, and you hire A players. That's hard to do, but let's say you get that done. How do you stay on the same page with that group? Like, if you're talking about a startup, like on a weekly basis, right? And if you're in a scale up, maybe you can stretch that out to a bi-monthly or monthly. But talk to us about staying on the same page.
Yeah, it has to be, I think the key when you do make those hires is making sure that ultimately you all share the same values, that you all have a very common vision for hospitality. So those are the fundamentals, right? If you are aligned on values and you're aligned on sort of strategic vision, the other things can be handled. Not everything is going to go smooth. Not everything is going to be, everyone's going to see exactly eye to eye. When you build a really good team, that's part of being an A player, right? Is not just challenging you for the sake of challenging you or creating unnecessary friction. That then wouldn't be a good fit. It's really about, as you evolve, as long as you're aligned on core values, for me, it just seemed like it always worked itself out. And you've got to be fair. You can't be a dictator. And, ultimately, sometimes a final decision does come down to you. But if your team feels that, they have no influence or their contributions don't matter, they're not going to stay around. So I think it's key to build a good management team that, really can achieve great things.
So this is from the perspective of ResortSuite. And for everyone who's listening, ResortSuite was, of course, acquired by Agilysys. And you then took on the role of Senior Vice President of Strategy. And we're talking about aligning the core vision. And I'm wondering what sort of differences are there from coming from the founder and CEO perspective and then coming in to be a part of a much larger operation and a larger team in terms of aligning values? How is that different?
Well, I think it's still the same. Like, I think you still ultimately, when I joined Agilysys, and first of all, when Ramesh called me about potentially acquiring ResortSuite, I was at my son's hockey practice and just got a call and out of the blue. And so we chatted, and I was, again, wasn't really looking to be acquired at that moment. And so we had a good chat. And, but what I had perceived of Agilysys at that time was very different than as I continued the conversations with Ramesh. I realized we had a common vision for hospitality technology. And as I started to meet more of the management team, I realized he really had created and assembled an amazing management team that sort of have each other's back and really were doing some incredible things. And just, since I joined him, the stock's almost tripled. So that just speaks to just having, really strong leaders that can work together, can challenge each other, but ultimately, it's around those core values and common vision. So it doesn't change if you're an entrepreneur or you're part of a larger company. And I've stayed because of it. I mean, my contract was really to stay on for a year, and now I'm into my third year. So, and that's only because, again, I really feel a part of this management team. I really believe in the vision that Agilysys is executing on. And so I think it's important, no matter what size of company, you still have to have those fundamentals, need to be consistent.
And can you, just for context, talk to us about what your day-to-day looks like now as a SVP of Strategy at Agilysys?
Sure. So I sort of focus on, obviously our product strategy and our corporate strategy. And so lots of activity going on in both areas. But ultimately, from a product perspective is, I can bring that experience I have and where, I believe we should be prioritizing things in our products that will really differentiate us in the marketplace. And so the exciting thing, coming from a small startup where you really had to think about the investments you were making and growing your team and all of that, especially from an R&D perspective, to now when we've got, close to 1,400 people in our India development center. Now we can come up with things that we believe are priorities in our products, and the pace of innovation, like how quickly we can get those things done, is amazing. So it's great for me. I don't have to worry about payroll anymore. I don't have to worry about things as an entrepreneur that keep you up at night. And I can focus on the fun things, which really is, product strategy that will, really set Agilysys apart, as we continue to move forward here.
Well, Frank, we're going to dive into our second question, which is more reflective, I guess, of some of your experience as an entrepreneur and as the CEO of your own company. And that is, what are some of the common pitfalls or failures you have witnessed that business owners should look to avoid when scaling their business?
Well, I think the important thing is not getting ahead of your skis, right? So it's a matter of being very thoughtful about how you take the next step in your business, how you grow, how you invest. And it's really the most important thing is get the product right. Don't try to scale your revenues like right out of the gate and trying to put your foot on the gas when, your product and probably your team are not quite ready. Right? It's better to focus on creating really good customer success stories and nurturing those relationships, and continue to evolve your product with, obviously the input you're getting from your customers, and not trying to scale. Too many entrepreneurs come in thinking it's going to be 3 to 5 years and they'll have scaled it to, tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's just not realistic. It, unless you catch, lightning in a bottle or something, it's just not done that way. And for me, we were kind of the longest running overnight success, right? It took a lot of hard work, and it may have appeared that, ResortSuite, was in a lot of opportunities and a lot of great iconic hotels and resorts around the world, but that didn't come without a lot of work, over a long period of time that we had to do. So that was the approach that I took, and certainly worked for me.
When you're making those product decisions, like you're talking about, talk to us a little bit about maybe the early days of those decisions that were made to do this or not to do that, not to get over your skis, to create the product that you thought was the best product that you could make at that time or at the near term future. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no. I mean, you have to sort of figure out who you want to be and what you want to be, right? And what's the market that you want to address. And so for me, it's interesting because I had a hotel background in the sense that my family at the time owned a resort, Hockley Valley Resort, north of Toronto. And so I growing up, I'd kind of done every job you can do in hospitality, right? Worked the front desk, worked banquets, was a waiter in the restaurant, opened the door for to guests as they arrived. So really did every job in hospitality. Was a golf resort, a ski resort. And while I was, after I completed, my university studies in computer science and was in Silicon Valley and working with Ernst & Young and a number of other sort of startups in technology, the family came calling, right? And said, we need to look at what system we can put in place to run our entire resort. And back then when I did my diligence, I really didn't find, most of the products were these siloed products. They either did property management or they did F&B or they did spa or golf or other things. But it was either I was going to put in a sort of a bit of a Frankenstein system or the one software that did exist that addressed some of those areas was built on a database called FoxPro. So I said, there's no way I can recommend to our, to the family to go and invest in that technology. So I just saw firsthand, I saw an opportunity to build a product. So when we built ResortSuite, we wanted to have, it was a suite of modules to run an entire resort, one guest profile kind of centered around a CRM. And so we really focused on that vision, spent 18 months building it. And at the end of that, the resort had something that could run the entire business. And I had a product now that I could take to market. So that was the arrangement, and kind of the rest is history. But we stayed true to that vision. We didn't try to, go outside of what we had drawn on the back of an envelope in Yorkville. Here's what we're going to build. I kind of sat with my first hire, employee number one, Stefan Kernopoulos, and we sat down and I kind of drew out the vision of what we were going to do, and that's what we did.
Well, just to backtrack to one of the first things you said here is this battle, I want to say, between product and revenue and getting out the gates. And a lot of technology companies, when they're at the startup or early scale up stages, they have some sort of money behind them, some sort of seed. Could be VC, private equity, whatever. And those guys are obviously looking for their return. So how would you advise young entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in technology to fight that battle, to say, listen, we need to devote more time to make the product, the viable product, more minimum, have a higher minimum before we really go to market and really start to scale the revenues? How do you get the money side to really back your vision to see the light of day in that regard?
Yeah, and there's so many different ways and what works for others, may not work for me. My approach was, I really used my own capital, my own sort of friends and family money to kind of bootstrap, and then really grew the revenues, organically. I think if we had taken money too early, it would have, we would not have been able to execute the way that we wanted to execute, because an investor, they might have a 3 or 5 year horizon. And if you haven't met the goals, they're going to want to get out. And that can be very damaging to a startup, because they're going to have liquidation preferences. They're going to have a lot of terms in that agreement that is going to be potentially a business ending event for a lot of startups. And that's how they end up. So for me, it's get as far as you can get with the minimum viable product on your own, right? And then decide at what point you want to inject capital, but it should be on your terms at that point. There's a lot of money out there. So, make sure that when you accept capital, it's on your terms, and don't just take money. Make sure that it's a strategic investor, somebody that can help the business in some way, shape, or form, right? They could open doors in hospitality, or they can, certainly provide additional assistance, maybe a fractional CFO or some other things that will save you costs moving forward, right? But just be very thoughtful and don't take money too early would be my advice.
So, Frank, we're going to move on to our third question here, which is, what do you see as the key opportunities and challenges for hospitality technology companies in 2024 and beyond?
Well, I think here at Agilysys, we're really focused on delivering technologies that can match guest expectations today, because guest expectations have changed dramatically just through COVID. What we're seeing from guests, their expectation around mobile technology, their expectations to be able to do things themselves. It used to be, it was all about self-service, it was always about hospitality is always one-to-one, right? And that's never going to change, but technology can really help to potentially take away the transactional parts of the experience where somebody would rather kind of do it on their own, maybe a check-in on their mobile device and provide their address and other things. And only when they actually speak to somebody, let's say at a hotel or that's checking them in some sort of experience, they can spend more time with the guest because they've taken care of all the transactional bits. And now they can be much better hosts, right? They can be much better at delivering that one-to-one hospitality experience. And so I think as technology vendors, we really have to think about that end-to-end guest experience. How can we make it smooth when a guest goes online? If they have to log into 6 different systems to book an entire experience, that's not it's not a great customer experience, a guest experience, right? They want to be able to go on, book their room, book their spa treatments, book dining reservations, book golf tee times, activities, whatever it is that particular property has to offer, making it really easy for that guest to interact, and then potentially use their mobile device to check in, to have their itinerary, to add to their itinerary while they're having dinner, talking about a wonderful spa treatment they had, book another one for the next day. All of those things, just making it super easy for a guest to interact and be in control of their experience, I think is a key opportunity. But it's also a challenge because a lot of the technology that's out there is very fragmented. Trying to create that kind of experience across 5 or 6 different vendors is not easy. It almost demands of the hotel to become the integrator and bring all these vendors together, trying to create, a seamless experience. And that's pretty difficult. So need to make sure that we're working together as an industry to make that, as seamless as possible. And I know all the work we're doing, at Agilysys, it's really about creating that end-to-end guest experience, which may be, a lot of Agilysys technology, or we may be, through the integrations we have with other partners, we can bring them in for certain elements. If someone is invested in, a separate system, being open to obviously integrating with those. And I think the most important challenge for the industry is modernizing the technology stack, right? A lot of vendors choose to basically put a pretty web front end on their old back end. So it's still the same software that was running before. It's still that in the back end. And all they've done is they put a web front end so you can run it in the browser. But that doesn't scale. It's not built for SaaS. It's not built in a way that makes that multi-tenant and scalable. And so I think, as you look at that, And that was one of the things that we realized, is that when we were competing with the Agilysys that was going to be now, right, 2 or 3 years down the road, we could see the writing on the wall, right, that they were at some point going to surpass, the depth of functionality that existed in ResortSuite. We've now put all of that into a modern cloud native stack. All of the products at Agilysys, from PMS to spa, golf, membership, F&B, everything has been completely modernized in a new stack. So that takes investment, takes time, but it's an important next step for the industry.
How do you take your cues to know what the guest is looking for?
I think guests, experience in other segments of daily life. They experience, the ability to order a Starbucks and have it delivered curbside in advance. Now they can go to McDonald's and use a kiosk or order on their phone, and now it's ready when they get there. And if you have like my car, it was 4 kids, 6 of us in the car, and you pull up to a drive-through. Not that we'd like to do that very often, but let's play with it as an example. To take everyone's order while someone's asking you, you can barely hear them on the loudspeaker. It's not a great experience. So now many are, using the technology to kind of serve themselves. And so and now these guests actually post-COVID, they were ordering delivery to their home, they were shopping for items, they were delivering food delivery. And so the consumer kind of got used to that, but now they come to hotels and it's almost like they've gone in the dark ages, right? It's now, I have to pick up the phone and call to order room service, or, in checking in, I got to stand in this long lineup and wait to be checked in. There's got to be a better way, right? And using technology, and there may be still that guest that wants to line up, they want to speak to someone, and that's okay. But if 90% of your guests would prefer to just do the check-in, get a digital key, go right to their room, then, offering that as an option, it's about choice. And I think you need to serve guests in the way that they want to be served, right? So it's all about omni-channel.
Well, you talk about what Agilysys is building and what you built at Resorts World, which are these all-in-one systems. And one interesting use case as an example that we've seen out of this is the whole idea of cross-departmental programming and adjustments, where if somebody, let's say they have an easy on-ramp to book a golf tee time at, let's say, 10 a.m., and it goes a little bit later, but they had a lunch reservation at 12, well, there's a system to automatically pace that back to 12:15 or 12:30. And that's just one little micro use case of how hotels can really adjust on the back end with these all-in-one systems to adjust their labor, to adjust the end experience to make sure it's on par with what the hotel should deliver.
Right.
And I'm wondering if you could, to the hotelier listeners, just open it up a little bit to show what's possible when you have an all-in-one system that can really help to amplify the end-to-end experience.
Yeah. So, I think it's a great question. Ultimately, it's what advantages can you create for both the hotel and for your product line that really it's kind of like 1 + 1 is 5, right? Like you want to make sure that each of the modules that you have can stand on their own as a best-in-class system. So when someone is reviewing spa software, you want to make sure that your spa system ticks all the boxes, right? And can do things like dynamic availability for revenue management, or dynamic pricing, whatever strategy they want to use, having sort of industry-leading capabilities in all of those areas. So each module, like our food and beverage system, is considered, best-in-class. Our PMS system considered best-in-class. But when you bring them together, the key there is how do you now create less is more for both the guest and obviously the hotel operator, right? Where now I can put in one stack that was designed to work together. I don't have to pay for interfaces between all of these modules. I have a common profile shared across all of those systems and a single itinerary. And that goes back to your point, Adam, that now it can detect when there's an issue, when there's a conflict, or something has extended and they're not going to make their dinner reservation, it should be able to act on that information and alert both the guest and potentially the operator as well, to suggest, moving their dinner reservation or their lunch reservation. So yeah, all of that is possible. I think, the ability to now curate for the guest, if they're staying on a certain package when they're booking online, they're not just booking a bunch of a la carte items, but it could be that, that package might have included golf. So you can prompt the guest to say, you're staying for 3 days. On the first day, when would you're allowed to play one of these 3 courses. When would you like to book your tea time? And then prompt them again for day 2 and day 3. The same with spa treatments. It might be a wellness where they get 2 spa services per guest per day, and they can pick from one of these 5 and one of these 3 services, and prompting them for those guests to fulfill the entitlements for their package. That's the holy grail of a hotel resort booking. It's not available today. And those are the kinds of things we're working on, is that making that as seamless as possible for the guest and for the operator. Again, just offering their products and services in a way that can engage the guest to upgrade their booking, upgrade their room type, dynamically setting the price of that, as well as for, ensuring that all of your amenities are easy to book. And again, going beyond just, revenue managing the head and bed reservation, our entire industry is focused on your room rate. But once the guest books that room, there's very little consideration done to revenue managing the other parts of the experience, the spa, dining, golf, activities, all of those other areas. We need to be thoughtful about, those areas also have demand. In some cases, room revenue might be number 2 or 3 in revenue contribution overall, right? Your spa, if it's a wellness destination, the spa might be what really drives the engine, and the room is actually an amenity. So you have to think about revenue in a different way. And, that's an area where we, we really want to establish our thought leadership.
Well, you mentioned rooms being number 2 or a contributor as part of a revenue mix, and the term there, of course, is the push towards total revenue.
Right.
And I'm wondering if you could speak to some of the features that would let hoteliers look on a reporting level to see how those ancillaries are performing, and then to help guide the overall vision to ramping up those ancillaries to go from a heads and beds operation to realizing a full resort style, full service product where the rooms are part of this larger total picture.
Yeah, we could probably have a whole podcast on that, right? On that alone.
That'd be fun.
But, really, ultimately, it comes down to those other areas of your operation, your spa, your golf, your dining. They all experience demand, right? So first of all, having analytics, business analytics, a BI product that can look across the entire property and see as your occupancy changes. And it might, you might see other insights, right? That I want to have a big group business that hasn't booked spa or golf. My revenues might be lower on those days in spa and golf, because now I don't have people in the hotel. They're all in meetings. So I don't have as much of a leisure mix that's driving, spa and golf spend, right? And being able to make sure you're making the right offers to the right guests, to potentially opening it up to local markets and all of those things. But, for other days that the demand is very high or will be as you're forecasting your pace of spa bookings, let's say, is maybe changing the mix of revenue of services that are available down to your highest margin treatments during your peak times, right? Yeah. So now the guest might want a wax service, which is a low margin treatment. And you'd say, well, even though you have it available at 2:00 when they requested, you say, well, I have it available at 7, which is a low demand time that usually goes unfilled. So now you're pushing, your low margin treatments into your non-peak times. And during your peak times, you're protecting it. And so they're now going to book a high value facial in those times. You're going to be fully booked. And a facial also draws retail revenue, right? Because people want to use or want to buy what you use on their face. And so if you just change the mix of what's available when, it can have a huge impact on overall revenue and create a better experience for all of your guests as well. So, I think there's really a win-win there. You're not changing the price necessarily. We have that option. You can do what's called dynamic pricing. Many spas will do, weekday or weekend pricing. But our view is dynamic availability is actually the best way to achieve, the ultimate revenue mix.
And, aside from just dynamic availability of offering the, I guess, profit maximizing treatments, facial versus a wax at the optimal times when your spas are busiest, you also have, through business intelligence, you can also see the cross pollination with the actual spa boutique in terms of, somebody, 10 people got a facial, and then of that, two out of 10 went on immediately afterwards, and they bought the Biologique Research or Nature Bissé products right there in the spa boutique immediately afterwards. So that's really cool.
That's exactly it. Like, it's having that information so you can see essentially the relation between services and product revenue and that mix, right? The optimal mix. So a lot of spas just operate in a if it's available in the schedule, just book it. Right. And not putting a lot of thought into that, into revenue managing their operation. But hotels have been doing it for a long time. Obviously, airlines, car rental companies. The time has come for golf operators, spa operators to really think about that, because it can have a profound impact on their financial results. And the financial health of the business, as we saw through COVID, is just as important as anything else. Right. So I really do think, the time has come to really be revenue managing all those amenities.
So, Frank, we can end off with more about the spa and wellness. And, we're both big believers about how important it is for hotels. But we'll dive into our fourth and final question before we dovetail back into that. So, Frank, what are the key things innovative leaders and entrepreneurs should prioritize and focus on to gain traction for their business?
I think don't just build another mousetrap or even a slightly better mousetrap, right? It's really about finding your niche, like finding how can you do something different, right? How can you, like the conversation we were just having, right? How can you find things that you can do that really move the needle and think in a different way, provide a product or service that's not available today in the way that you're envisioning, right? So I think, innovation has to be about creating those differentiating features that will fundamentally change the business, right? You can build yet another PMS or yet another point of sale product, but ultimately you've got to look at what is it that you are going to do, pretty differently that's going to differentiate you from the crowd, from the hundreds of other products that exist in that particular area, right? Whatever the area of focus is that you have. So I just think it's about finding that niche, creating an innovative culture in your company, right? Where, new ideas are welcomed and celebrated. And we did a lot of that even in our ResortSuite days, right? Really focus on our team to come to meetings with new ideas and even spend time on those ideas, and sometimes on their own time, right? And come in and say, and then propose it to their peers, right? It was really a fun time. And a lot of product features came out of those innovative meetings that we had, right? So, it's really about ensuring that everyone has a voice and creating that culture of innovation.
Talk to us a little bit more about the different, like it sounds like you niche down with resorts and you stood there, and anytime you're doing anything different, it takes quite a bit of education. It's kind of a different go to market when you do that, because people don't know what they don't know, and you have to spend some effort, right? Educating. It's like, this is the way. That's the old way. That's you don't want to do it that way anymore.
Right.
Talk to us about that.
Well, we focus this on a segment of the market that, like, we just didn't want to be another PMS and have to go up against every other PMS company that was out there, right? So we focused on a part of our product at ResortSuite, and what we've now brought over to Agilysys as well. And Agilysys now, I think, from a best-in-class perspective on a modern stack, there's an spot product that can compare, right? So with ResortSuite, as an entrepreneur, I focused on that was going to be the market segment that we were going to really dominate in, right? So when you're looking at hotels, it wasn't just, there's all kinds of different classes of hotels, right? From, select service, all the way up to luxury resorts and everything else. What we really felt was if we could create a product that really dominated in one particular sector, and some of the customers we had early on, they weren't, hotels with a spa, they were spas with a hotel, right? Where the room's the amenity. And so creating that wellness experience, that wellness journey, the PMS became important, but secondary to being able to deliver this end-to-end guest experience that was built around a wellness journey or a wellness experience. And that was very different. Most other PMS companies were, we want to take your reservation, we want to check you in, and check you out smoothly and all of that. And that's what a lot of PMS systems do. But in a lot of ways, it's a commodity. So what can you do differently? How can you approach the problem differently and make yourself look different, in the process, so that you're not trying to boil the ocean and, sell to everybody in the same way that, oh, we have the same features as these other PMS products, right? It's about how do you approach the market, build a beachhead. I got very involved with ISPA and the Global Wellness Summit and a number of organizations in spa and wellness that, I was able to be in the room with other leaders and understand, the challenges that the industry faced and how could we build our products to address those challenges, right? So that was just my approach to it, and it worked well.
So one thing, Frank, I guess that you and I are really trying to push forward is the future of hospitality is wellness in many ways. And yes, there's always going to be the need for select service hotels that are heads and beds, but really focusing on the wellness journey. And I use that word journey because I do think that technology can really aid in driving that journey. So can you talk to us about some of the features that you've seen that can really help hotels really maximize the on-site wellness journey for guests across, whether that's across rooms, spa, activities, other touch points?
Yeah, no, I think, and then, as we talked about the whole package booking, right? Allowing a guest to go on and book an entire experience, which can include, spa treatments and yoga classes and hiking and activities, all built around wellness. Food and nutrition is a big part of wellness. So ensuring that your F&B offerings also have a wellness component. So as they're selecting, being able to show them ingredients and show them that this is matched to your profile. These are the items we recommend based on your assessment that we did when you first arrived, right? And so it's about curating that experience in a very personalized way and being able to do personalization at scale. Because it's easy when you're a bed and breakfast with 5 rooms, right? You know all your guest names, you can learn a little bit about them and everything else. But when you have a team of hundreds of employees that are serving guests, you need technology to be able to deliver that personalization at scale, right? So if I reported that I have an allergy to nuts in the spa, now I'm having dinner, the server's telling me to stay away from 2 or 3 items because they do have nuts in them, right? So it's about how do you create, those conditions of providing a personalized experience at scale.
Yeah, the whole idea of a single guest journey, whether that's both the itinerary and also the guest profile CRM component of that, in terms of making sure that the nut allergy isn't just something in a comment field that stays there, but it translates across every touch point with the guest.
Exactly.
To close out with, I guess the last question is, a tagline I've heard for Agilysys is return on experience. And in my mind, that's synonymous with wellness, because wellness is an experience and it really adds to satisfaction as well as the total revenue component. And I'm wondering if again, you could color that in terms of actually measuring all these little micro experiences and different experiences that a guest would have across a full service product, and then how we report on that and how we can see that in real time using technology.
Yeah, I mean, it really does come down to having technology that can really be part of that entire end-to-end experience, right? And then it's a lot easier to activate that return on experience, to measure it, and just really, our thought around that from a marketing perspective is it's not just a return on investment. It's not just a siloed thinking of every product we put in place, a PMS system, an F&B system, but how do we look at it holistically and then look at, how we can create the types of moments and experiences that guests crave and that guests will rave about, right? And so it's that return on experience that's most important in hospitality, because we are about creating experiences for guests, right? So if you're focused on that as a metric, I think you're on the right track.
Awesome. Well, Frank, it's been a delight to have you on and to talk about a lot of very important topics for both entrepreneurs and hoteliers to think about. Frank, thank you.
It was a pleasure, Adam. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Gain Momentum podcast. To stay up to date, make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Gain Advisors, head to gainadvisors.com.